Alright, I'm going to show you a couple techniques on this next one. As you can see on the variegated wash, you can see where things kind of puddle, and you can tell where the paper's kind of puckered a little bit and things have ran down. This is going to happen with watercolor. This is what we call, or what I call, happy mistakes. Sometimes you just got to go with it and make it part of your painting. So you want it interesting to look at, but you want to be able to kind of control. If we wanted to, like I said, we could go back in and probably soak up some of this. If you take some paper towel, it will soak up some of those puddles. If we didn't want that yellow in there, we could probably go back in with a little bit of red, but I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Alright, the next one's called wet on wet. I really like this one, wet into wet. Wet means you want the paper wet, so we're going to put down a coat of water, clean water. Again, I've got my clean cup, not my dirty one. And I don't want it soaking wet, but I don't want it super dry either. And then you're going to take, and I went ahead and put some water into these. So I'm going to take some over here. I'm going to add a little purple into it. And you want this kind of darker, I guess it depends. This one kind of gives you a tie-dyed effect. So if you just drop it in, it kind of spreads out because the paper is wet underneath. And because it is wet underneath, it doesn't give a hard edge to it, so it kind of spreads out. So if you were doing some different colors, maybe you were doing a tree scene in the background, you had some foliage, you could do some different greens. So let's try some different greens in here. So we could add a bunch of greens in the background. Then if I wanted to add some yellow or yellow-green into that, it's going to look kind of fuzzy and blurry. But backgrounds are supposed to lose their detail a little bit. And notice I am changing or cleaning my brush each time. Okay, so you notice how it kind of runs one into the other, but that's what makes it look interesting. The next one is dry brush. Dry brush is just like an acrylic dry brush. You want to clean your brush and then you want to dry it off. So I'm going to take a paper towel, dry it off. I'm going to use the flat brush for this. So we're going to use this one. I'm going to dry it off, and then I'm going to take some paint, but you want to dry it off a little bit too. And you want to kind of bring out your bristles, and then you just kind of go across, and you want to see those lines in there. Alright? Again, it's something you would use for texture, just to give a little texture on something. So maybe you put down a light brown, you go over with darker brown, and gets a little bit of a bark effect. Okay, so that's your dry brush. The next one is glazing. Notice I went ahead and put down some yellow. You want your color down first. Glazing is just like with the acrylic too. We're putting one color over the top of another color, so it's a transparent over a transparent. So you want to do a flat wash first, let that dry, okay, and then what you'll do is you will take another color. So let's take the red. So I'm going to grab a little bit of red, this little darker red, and again you just go right over the top of it. And you see it just warms up that color just a little bit. So you can see, you want to be able, with glazing, you want to be able to see that color underneath, but you want to see also the color on top. Now when you do this one, do not cover up this whole thing. I want to see your original color first. Alright, and you should have a little bit of a hard edge here. When you paint wet on dry surface, it will give you a hard edge. If you paint wet on wet, then it gives you these fuzzy surfaces. So if you want a fuzzy soft edge, wet on wet. If you want a hard edge, then you do wet on dry.